Welcome to the latest edition of the Cheltenham Trail with Andy Gibson as we look back at the weekend's action from Cheltenham and Doncaster. So welcome back, Andy. First of all, I'd like to touch on Sam Spinner's performance at Doncaster. I thought he was a little bit disappointing with some of his jumping and jumped right again at times. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you're going to jump right, you're going to jump right at Doncaster, particularly those 2 or 3 fences on the turn. Perhaps you would say the same about Cheltenham. Yeah. He's on the one hand, he's done a lot wrong in his 3 chases, and on the other hand, he's one of those horses. He's found a way of remaining unbeaten. Perhaps he's not beaten a lot. I mean, Windsor Avenue, personally, I think was a blatant non-stayer on the day. I think most people would agree with that. I'm sure we'll see Windsor Avenue back over 2.5 miles. But for Sam Spinner, I'd love the opportunity of him trading at 4 to 11, 4 to 7, whatever, against a viable opponent. But given that they're likely to stay to Doncaster, Wetherby, given they're likely to stay in the north of England, how many horses are going to be highly enough rated to challenge him, even though he does an awful lot wrong in his races by continually jumping out to his right? I assume that the RSA is the target, and it might be that we end up getting to the RSA with him 5 from 5, with having still the same doubts of him not beating anything and continually jumping to his right. And he'll probably be 8 or 10 to 1 on the day because of those doubts. He wouldn't be for me, but I'd rather, you're not going to win any house points by opposing him at 10 to 1 in an RSA, but you might make some money if something from the south comes up and opposes him at Wetherby or Doncaster this season over 3 miles. That would be quite interesting, I think.
And he does keep winning though, doesn't he? I mean, he's unbeaten over fences so far. It's just hard to get a grip of that form, especially, as you said, with Windsor Avenue looking like such a blatant non-stayer.
And in my experience, sometimes you get horses like this that you say, oh, I can't wait to oppose him when he gets it. And then he gets it and he wins again, and you say, oh, I can't wait to oppose. And he's not for me. I'm not. I don't think he's convinced as a chaser. And at the same time, they've done extremely well with him. And he's been well placed. And you would imagine there's a reasonable chance that he'll go to Cheltenham 5 from 5.
So now on to Mr. Fisher's race at Cheltenham, and I was pretty impressed with his performance, and he was obviously good value for the winning margin there. He was well on top in the finish, I thought. Yeah,
I agree. And what interested me about it was that they were making a big deal about why Spirit of the Games and Warthog finished so tired on the run-in because they'd gone such a blistering pace. Well, actually, the pace set by Good Boy Bobby was quicker. It was quicker all the way through, and yet Mr. Fisher was something like 15 lengths quicker than Spirit of the Games from the final fence to the line. I think on the one hand that strongly suggests that Spirit of the Games stopped on the run-in, and I think that's supported by the way that Warthog came back at him, and the 3rd and 4th to finish also closed up on Spirit of the Games in the same, pro rata to the winner. Excuse me. And but it also adds to the performance of Good Boy Bobby and Mr. Fisher, and I think this could be very good form indeed. Personally, I think it's the best JLT form we've seen this side of the Irish Sea this season. I mean, that might not be saying much because 5 of the 6 first horses in the betting for the JLT are Irish trained, but I thought he'd be a single figure price after this because it's like he's run round the course and distance, he's beaten a really good contender, he's jumped well, he would have absolutely hated the ground, and Proform, by the way, had the ground close to heavy. That would have been terrible for Mr. Fisher. That notion is supported by Nico de Boinville after the race, saying that he really was uncomfortable on the ground and he's done well to win. He's a real contender, and yet he was available at 16 to 1 afterwards.
And de Boinville only really got serious with him after the last, didn't he? He travelled well up until that point.
Yeah, he just tracked, and then went on from the last and won very causally. Now, fans of pounds per lengths will say Good Boy Bobby was giving him the penalty. Fair enough. Whether that would have made a difference depends on your belief of what how accurate we can be in working out pounds and lengths. I think Good Boy Bobby will be better on good to soft in that he might have been coming towards the buckle end of his stamina limitations, and maybe on good to soft ground he'll have a stronger chance. Where will they go with Good Boy Bobby? Well, they've got a horse who looks primed to finish in the first 6 in the GLT at worst, might do an awful lot better. You know, why wouldn't they go there? I could answer my own question there. What about Al Dancer? I suppose it depends on him really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see what, I mean, Al Dancer needs to put in a performance on better ground when we see him. Hopefully he'll get the chance. If Al Dancer turns out not to be an Arkle horse and the Arkle came up soft to heavy, you could easily see them rerouting with Good Boy Bobby and having to go from the front in the Arkle. And even if he couldn't win it, he might impact on the challenge of Fakir Dudaries.
Yeah, not getting all his own way out from
Maybe. But it's something to think about.
Call Me Lord hang on in quite grim fashion from a fast finishing Ballyandy. What did you make of the form? I was slightly concerned that they finished in quite a heap really in the fact that there was 5 or 6 of them in with a chance at the last.
Yeah. and that often means either the race is not that good, because you know if you're not going to have 6 superstars in one race, or it was a slow pace and a sprint finish. And looking at the time comparisons with the juvenile winner of the opener, Call Me Lord was a couple of seconds slower than Botox Haas in the first, from the first hurdle to the second last. And yet from the second last hurdle to the winning line, he was about 6 seconds quicker, you know, around about 30 lengths quicker than the juvenile, from 2 out to the winning line. So really, at least in relation to the first race, the international hurdle was a very slowly run affair with a sprint finish from 2 out to the line. Now, you would say that wouldn't suit Call Me Lord, so I think he's done very well. You could argue that it wouldn't suit Ballyandy, who probably, well, certainly stays further. I don't think it suited Chitabella, who likes to come off a fast pace, and I think he found himself in front, seeing daylight sooner than I would like, and sooner than I'm sure the Skeltons would have liked. Michel Lecoq ran past beaten horses, might be flattered, but he's another one that might have wanted a quicker pace. I don't know what you think, but I thought Pendleton Hills always looked like a horse needing the run.
Yeah, certainly travelling best. I thought he was the winner for all money, really, as he approached the last. But yeah, just his effort seemed to peter out pretty quickly, didn't it? It was pretty short-lived.
Yeah, he just looked like a horse needing the run. If he'd have not needed the run, he looked like one set to go on and win by 2 or 3 lengths. And then I think he would have been 5 or 6 to 1, you know, vying. He would have been third favourite perhaps for the champion hurdle. So I'd still mark him up and say that he's potentially the best horse in that race. He still might be a champion hurdle contender in a year where there are few contenders, maybe 1 or 2 Irish, maybe Pendleton Hills and 1 other from this side. The other one might be Fusel Raffles, if you take Henderson at his word afterwards. He definitely implied that Fusel Raffles could be his #1 contender. So, you know, Pendleton Hills might be a champion hurdle contender, but he also might not be the best horse in the stable for the champion hurdle. Close call.
Yeah, I thought Ballyandy's prominence in that race and managing to finish second, I've just never really had him down as a top-notcher, really, and I think you feel the same, don't you?
I do, and he got beaten in the race to the outside rail by Chitabella after the second last. Now, if he'd have got the outside rail, he would have enjoyed a kind of trip through the final sort of half mile. Instead, he had to switch quite dramatically from the outside to the inside from the last. I think he's lost 3 or 4 lengths at least doing that manoeuvre. Certainly momentum he's lost.
Yeah.
And he's probably ended up on the more chewed up ground on the inside as a result. And he's only just been beaten. Now, if he'd have stuck to the outside rail and come away and won by a cosy couple of lengths, which I think he would have done, or very, very likely, I don't think we'd be suddenly saying Ballyandy is a single figure price for the champion hurdle. And we would be very clear then that this race wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good enough. If there is a champion hurdle contender in it, it can only be Pendleton Hills, I think, because he's the one that travelled best throughout, and he's the one that you've got the biggest excuse for. Possibly Call Me Lord, possibly because he's also the one that I would say has done remarkably well to win off a slow pace with a sprint finish, considering how much he needs 2.5 miles. Certainly, he's put to bed the notion that he can't go on a left-handed track. So presumably they'll be going for the champion hurdle. He'll be suited by what you would normally expect a festival gallop to be.
Yeah.
So again, Call Me Lord looks pretty likely to finish in the first half dozen at worst. It's all about prices now, isn't it? You've got 3 Henderson horses, you've got 2 or 3 from Ireland, and not a lot else really.
And anything else that you spotted over the weekend?
There was a couple of races, a few performances that caught my eye. Certainly the Navan Novices Hurdle on Sunday was interesting. Latest exhibition beating the odds-on Andy Dufresne. That was most interesting because of its impact on the market, so on the anti-post markets for Cheltenham. So Abracadabras was supported from something like 8-9 to 1 into 5-6 to 1 as a result of this race. That's for 2 reasons, I think. First, because he beat Latest Exhibition last time out easily, and secondly, because with Andy Dufresne getting beat, I think it possibly added to the notion that Envoy Allen might end up in the Ballymore rather than the Supreme. Maybe I think that's probably on people's minds. I mean, Latest Exhibition is clearly better over this trip 2.5 than he was over the trip when he was beaten by Abracadabra. So that clouds the issue a little bit, I think. Andy Dufresne is still half the price of Latest Exhibition for the Ballymore, and I think that's just to do with the power and impact of hype. You know, I know Latest Exhibition, I know there's a possibility he might go Albert Bartlett route, but really at the moment, how do we know what trip Andy Dufresne's got? Because he's just been beaten, put in his place comfortably, and Latest Exhibition was much better than him on the day. Now obviously the Gordon Elliott yard will presumably hope to find something wrong with Andy Dufresne. And I've already heard a couple of noises saying that wasn't him, and you could tell that by the 3rd horse closing him down. And of course that all might be true, but I don't think we should be basing our analysis on possibilities of what the, you know, because there's kind of a notion that because he's highly rated, oh, there must have been something wrong because the trainer has said so many good things about him. You know, trainers get surprised, and they get surprised again, and they get surprised again, and you know, I'd rather look at what Andy Dufresne's done, and at the moment, he's been beaten fair and square by Latest Exhibition, and that's where I would rank him until he shows something to the contrary. We'll see what that happens. Well, I thought there was a few little performances that looked interesting. One at Doncaster was Cloth Cap.
Yeah.
He's just a horse crying out for good to soft or good ground. I was glad he got beat on Saturday because he was a short price, and I'm hoping that that won't do his price any harm when we do get to see him on good ground. There's a couple of races at Doncaster in January, the Grimthorpe, something like that might be suitable for him, and quite often that's run on better ground. Le Patriot is a horse we've mentioned before. He finished last of 8 in the International, which again was very, very pleasing because he's got unfashionable connections, at least for graded races. Yeah. And you know, Proform had the ground as close to heavy on Saturday at Cheltenham. He would have absolutely hated that ground. And he's just crying out for a nice 2 mile, 2 mile 3 race, good ground. He's better than he's looked, and he's one that I would be really interested in, mainly because he's going to be a big price, because there's always going to be horses from the Nichols and Henderson yard that are preferred to him in the market. Something like the National Spirit, if in the unlikely event it was run on good to soft or good ground this year. It is from time to time, but usually it's too soft. But something like that sort of level of race I think would suit Le Patriot. Ballywood, again, we mentioned him the other week. He's run a really good race, again on ground close to heavy. He wants goodish ground, so good to soft, good ground. He's a well-handicapped horse. Fan de Soy hails from the Tom George yard. Now, they're badly out of form at the moment. He was a little bit slow and clumsy over 1 or 2 down the far side. He briefly looked a threat approaching the final hurdle and then weakened rapidly, as many from the yard have done recently. He's either needed the run or it's to do with the yard form. Yeah. He's very interesting when the yard returns form. I think he's a well-handicapped horse. And Falco Blitz, last time out he had the run of the race when he went round the outside. This time I think Nico tried to get off the inside, but once he realised he wasn't going to get off it, he just had to go for it, and he's gone down the inside rail, right up the home straight. Yeah. And I think that's impacted him on his chances there. He's finished 4th. He's done well to finish 4th. I think he's better than that. Probably Champers on Ice, you could say the same. He's finished third and took the inside rate.
That's all for this week. Join us again next time for more anti-post analysis from Andy Gibson.